Thank you for joining me for today's discussion of a couple of the topics that are found in Chapter 9 of your textbooks. And that chapter deals with managing products and services. In this presentation, we're going to focus on the product and tourism life cycles and a little bit on relationship marketing and customer service. But we'll start with the product life cycle and the tourism life cycle. The product life cycle has been used for years, and it basically argues that all products follow through a natural progression of stages in their life. They begin in the product development stage, where you're not actually selling anything, but you're investing a lot into production capacity, distribution, and so forth. And then we move into the introduction stage, and the introduction stage is again a capital outlay, capital intensive, because you're pushing something onto the market, but you're not yet recouping it by having a lot of sales and a high profit margin. The profits really come in when you get into the growth and the maturity stages. At the growth stage, as the name implies, your sales are growing, as are your profits. When you reach maturity, that's usually the peak point, the point at which you're selling the most, and your profits are generally fairly strong, fairly substantial. And then it moves into the decline stage. In the decline stage, obviously, the sales drop and the profits drop as well. So the biggest question following this model is, where do your tourism services and products fit into the product life cycle? The problem with this is the product life cycle isn't very good in the tourism sector. A number of criticisms have been levied against the product life cycle, many of which are criticisms that apply because the product life cycle really doesn't service the tourism sector. One of them is that it doesn't really apply to a lot of products and services, especially a lot of services. Products, by their nature, can go out of style. They can be replaced by more modern versions of the product. So there is a natural product lifestyle in some areas, but not necessarily in all areas. And it may become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you follow the life cycle, you may say to yourself, well, this particular product line is going into decline, and so we need to replace it, or we need to get rid of it, without thinking about ways to keep it at the maturity stage or even return it to a growth stage. It's also hard to determine what stage you're at right now and predicting when changes are going to occur, when you're going to move from one stage to another. So basically what this comes down to is that you may place a lot of faith in the product life cycle, but ignore a lot of other factors that would actually give you better direction of what you should be doing with the products and services that you offer. As a response to a lot of the criticisms of the general product life cycle, the tourist area life cycle has been developed, and this is the idea that a tourist attraction goes through stages similar to a product life cycle, but the style of stage and what happens at the stages varies. So for example, in the early days, you have a lot of exploration and trying to get people involved with the area. So first of all, people need to discover that the tourist area or the tourist offering even exists. They have to explore it as a possibility, and then they have to have some initial involvement, which often involves seeking information about this particular product. Over time, you'll develop a relationship, you'll get greater knowledge of that, and you'll consolidate and have a greater desire to attend, to visit a tourist location, or to be part of it. Eventually, in this consolidation, you reach a stagnation stage where you're still having a lot of visitors, for example, or you're still providing a lot of services in this tourism sector, but you're starting to level off. The growth period is over, and at that point, then there are a variety of things you can do that will either lead to a stabilization where you will continue to sell roughly the same and have the same amount of capacity being used, or you will rejuvenate it or have slightly less growth but continue to grow. What most organizations don't want to see is either a decline or an immediate decline. And those kinds of situations are often forced, the immediate declines are often forced by external factors. Think about the pandemic and a variety of other things that had nothing to do with the level of service being provided or the quality of the services being provided. It was simply an external factor that dramatically impacted tourism. Here's an example of a diagram of the tourist area life cycle, and it asks the question, where is South Dakota tourism in the life cycle? Or where is Vermilion in the life cycle? It would be much easier to ask about a specific element. So for example, you could argue that more recent tourism contributions to the tourism sector within the state of South Dakota are more likely to be at the exploration and involvement stages, whereas some of the standard tourism sites, think Mount Rushmore, Reptile Gardens, maybe even the Corn Palace in Vermilion, have reached a consolidation point at least, and some would argue that they have reached a stagnation and are possibly, some of the elements could be in decline at this point. So there's this constant effort to rejuvenate the offerings that we have that may have reached a point of stagnation and trying to prevent them from going into a decline. We do this by looking at the individual products that are involved, the individual offerings that we have. And the next slide is going to talk a little bit more about how we can categorize those offerings and choose which ones we're going to provide extra emphasis and which ones we're going to cut loose. The Boston Consulting Group developed a matrix many years ago that helps the individual running an organization to decide which elements of their products and services are doing well, need to be maintained or need to be enhanced, and which elements should be cut. It's based on the idea that there are two factors, market growth and market share. And if you look at it starting in the lower left-hand corner, we start with the low growth, low share. These are what they refer to as dogs. There's low market share, we don't sell a lot, and what we do sell, there's very little potential for growth in that area as well. Basically, if you find products or services in this area, you want to liquidate them as quickly as possible. In the upper left-hand quadrant, you see the question marks. These are currently have a low market share, but they have high market growth potential. So there are opportunities here, and the challenge in the question marks category is to decide which few you're going to hold on to and you're going to invest and try and make a stronger offering, and which ones you're going to divest and get rid of. In the upper right hand, we have the stars. This is the high growth, high market share. These, of course, you want to hold on to. They're well established. These are fantastic opportunities. They offer you great return on your investment. And finally, in the lower right hand corner, you have the cash cows. The cash cows have a high market share. Often in the tourism sector, these are things that your location, your area, your business are known for, but they don't necessarily have a lot of growth potential. We tend to hold on to these because they continue to provide for the bottom line, they continue to bring in money, and very often they help to establish the reputation of an organization. The BCG Matrix could be used, for example, by the individuals at the Vermilion Chamber and Development Corporation to highlight different aspects, different tourist attractions or amenities that Vermilion offers to visitors, and to go through and look at those that are the dogs, question marks, stars, and cash cows for our particular area. So it can be used on a larger scale for regional tourism, but very often it's used at a more micro level where the focus is on the operations of an individual business. The BCG scale can be used, as I mentioned, for focusing on the operations of an individual business or maybe a chain of businesses. For example, if you had restaurants, one of the things you can do is to look at menu sales to determine what elements of the menu need to be deleted, needed to be replaced with something else, which ones are your stars, which ones are your cash cows, etc. You can also use it with hotel amenities. For example, a number of hotels that cater to business travelers decided many years ago to stop having a pool inside and replace that with things that were more attractive to the business travelers. They did an analysis and discovered that the contribution, the increase in sales from business travelers and overnight stays was greater with other amenities than it was with having a pool. Now that we've talked a little bit about managing and developing new products, it's important that we talk about the delivery of those products, because the service component is absolutely critical in most tourism operations. There are a few key terms that we need to define here. First is customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction occurs when a firm's service, as it's perceived by the customers, and perception here is the key, meets or exceeds those expectations. So we're satisfied if our expectations have been at least met. We prefer, of course, that they're exceeded. You also have service quality, and again, this is perception-based. It's resulting from the attitudes formed by the customer's long-term overall evaluations of performance. So as we get more and more experiences, our perceptions of what is quality service changes. And then finally, consumer expectations. Each individual consumer makes their decisions on what they're going to purchase, what they're going to do, etc., based on past experiences. And that's based on a set of expectations for the performance of that product or service. The problem is that customer expectations are sometimes a moving target, and they're often variable. What customers expect depends a lot on what they want from a tourist destination. In the next segment, on the next slide, there's a short segment where you see an example of how customer expectations can change in a very short period of time.
Staying in a nice hotel here. You know. All hotels are nice that first night, right? You're like, this is pretty sweet. And the next day you're like, this place is a dump. Because we get spoiled so quickly in hotels, you know? They could have the nicest amenities, but after a couple days you're like, same chocolate on the pillow. You'd think by now they know I like peanut butter. I stayed at the Animal Kingdom Lodge in Disney. There were giraffes right outside my window. But by the end of the week, I was like, giraffe again. How about a lion? How about a lion eating a giraffe? That would be magical, Disney. Because we get spoiled. In hotels, there's a sense of entitlement. You ever leave for the day and you come back and they haven't had a chance to clean your room? There's a certain amount of outrage. Excuse me. There is a towel on the floor of my bathroom. Can you send a maid or a manservant to pick it up? I demand we burn the peasant village. They spoil us. I always feel guilty when I get out of the cab, the bellhop's like, can I help you with your backpack? No. But here's $5. Sorry you have to dress like Captain Crunch. Do enjoy your crunch berries.
Your text author euphemistically refers to problems with service as gaps in service quality, and they describe 5 types or 5 gaps at service quality. The importance of this is that there is no one distinct variable that leads to problems with service, and so you have to often identify where the gap or the problem has occurred in order to come up with a solution. The general service gap is the first one, and it occurs usually when there's a problem someplace else. It's the idea that it's the final gap that exists where there's a difference between what the customers expect in terms of service and their perceptions of what the actual service was that they received Now, there are a number of different things that can cause it, but your text describes 4 things that are likely causes. One of them is a knowledge gap, and a lot of these have to do with the management of service. And this is where the management's perceptions of what the consumers expect is really different from what the consumers actually expect. So they may be creating a service delivery program that is providing exactly what they want it to provide, but the problem is that they misread or misinterpreted what the consumers actually wanted. Another reason for a service gap is a gap in standards. This is an idea of a discrepancy that occurs between the management's perceptions of what the customers expect and then how they design the delivery process. So in this case, the manager's perception of what the customers actually want is correct, but what they've designed in order to provide the service and deliver the service to meet those expectations isn't correct and isn't achieving the expectations desired. There are 2 additional gaps in service that can lead to an overall service gap between the expectations, what the customer expects, and what they actually receive. The first one is the delivery gap, and this occurs when there's a difference between the service delivery specifications and the actual service delivery. So we've specified the service, but what they're actually receiving, the actual service, isn't what we've specified. And then finally is the communications gap, and this occurs when there's a difference between the service delivered and the service promised, and this is a major problem. If people promise, if there's an expectation, even an implication of service at a particular level, but you don't deliver at that level, then obviously the expectations were not achieved, or were not at least met in this process. One of the reasons that quality of service is so critical is that it's the foundation for relationship marketing. We're going to define relationship marketing in just a minute, but right now it's important to realize that relationship marketing is really based on the idea that it's cheaper to keep the people that you already have than it is to go out and search for new customers. So the focus of relationship marketing goes beyond simple sales. The focus is on attracting individuals, developing a relationship with them, and then retaining them over the long term so that you have long-term sales, long-term relationships. This is also a good way to develop brand advocates who will go out and work for your brand in the future. So, what do we mean when we say that we want to establish relationship marketing?
So, more formally, we could say that relationship marketing is a form of marketing that seeks to establish, to maintain, and to grow a business relationship between an organization and its customers. A relationship based on a profound understanding of their customers and their needs, but also on trust towards the brand. We use the term relationship marketing as opposed to transactional marketing because the goal isn't simply to sell products or services at a given point in time, but to build and grow a relationship over time and to grow customer lifetime value. With transactional marketing, marketing campaigns have but one objective: to make the sale. With relationship marketing, the objective is still to make the sale, but not at the cost of the relationship, by spamming customers or trying to sell them the wrong product. True relationship marketing creates value for customers who trade their attention and ultimately their hard-earned cash for information, an experience, and the solution to their needs. Simply put, relationship marketing is about making yourself useful and valuable in the eyes of the customer. It's about helping them make the right choices and to get more enjoyment out of everything they buy. That's what I call B2Me. With that in mind, the marketer's role is to migrate customers along a continuum, moving them from the state of prospect to customer, from casual to loyal, and from discovery to brand ambassador. So there you have it in a nutshell. That is what relationship marketing is all about.
So relationship marketing is a style of marketing that rewards the long-term relationships built with customers. And those relationships tend to be focused on the development of trust, the development of the idea that a product or service is useful, and that basically that product or service is the solution to a problem. Everybody has a problem. They haven't traveled in a long time. They need to relax. What's the solution? Your tourist destination. So if you can establish a relationship where people feel comfortable, where they feel that they can advocate for you, and that they believe in the services, the products that you're providing, that long-term relationship will not only encourage them to be repeat visitors, repeat customers, but it will also encourage them to speak fondly of your products and your services so that they will encourage other people to come to your destination. While relationship marketing is the superior option for long-term sales and long-term relationships, there are several conditions that you really need to have to make the relationship marketing approach work. One of them is that the customer has to have some sort of ongoing relationship with the organization. If they have just sporadic interactions, it's less likely that you'll be able to establish a form of relationship. The customer also has to be able to control the selection of the service organization. If they're limited to a single organization and they have no choice in the matter, then the relationship marketing isn't really an approach that's going to work. And alternative service providers really have to make it easy for customers to switch. And if that's the case, then it's much more likely that a relationship marketing approach is going to work. Because of the importance of customer service to the tourism sector, the South Dakota Department of Tourism has created an online hospitality training program. And that program is designed to provide some basic skills in hospitality for individuals who are essentially frontline workers in the hospitality industry. To help you develop those skills and to have a certification that you can show upon completion of the class and upon completion of the program, I have waived the paper 3 and in its place taken those points for this online hospitality training program. So please take a look at the instructions in the content section of the D2L page, where it describes what you should do for this online hospitality training program. And while I don't think you'll find the training is particularly difficult, it is an important topic. The 8 sections listed here are particularly important to the hospitality industry, and having that certification as you enter the job market could prove to be very useful. Thank you for joining me today for this discussion of some of the topics from Chapter 9 on managing products and services. In particular, we discussed the product life cycle and the tourism life cycle, and a little bit about relationship marketing and customer service. I hope you find this information useful as you study the material in Chapter 9 and prepare to take the quizzes and then also the exam. Again, if you have any questions over the material from Chapter 9, anything that I've talked about today, or anything about the course, please be sure to get a hold of me. My email is chuck.lubers@usd.edu. Thank you.